Hey everyone, quick note from me here. Thank you to everyone who has supported the last video. It's absolutely blown my mind with how well it's done, and I appreciate every single one of you who has joined the community. So I won't go rambling on too much, but you guys are amazing. Hope you enjoy this week's video. G'day everyone, welcome to today's video. In my hands, I've just received this beautiful Elegoo Satin 3 Ultra. This video is going to be a little bit more of an ad-lib kind of thing as I do a bit of an unboxing. Then we'll jump into the next part of the video, which I'm going to be comparing this bad boy to my current workhorse, the Anycubic Photon Mono X. But without further ado, let's jump into this. So I have never had Elegoo printers before. I've only ever had experience with Photon Monos, or Anycubics I should say. I've heard that they do a really good unboxing experience. Let's get that one now. So as always, we got our power connector, voila, and I will come back in a second when we've got everything all unpacked. Alrighty, we've got everything unpacked. Gonna do the satisfying peelies on this bad boy. I will admit, very, very well packaged. Nothing like I've seen before. Not that it's too fancy, but I actually really like what they've done with this bad boy. Because I don't remember my Anycubic printers coming wrapped up in plastic like this. So it has been a couple of years since I bought these guys. Don't mind the plastic sounds.
Yeah, because what was your old model that you've got right now?
It's the Photon Mono X.
And what date was that released?
Oh, years ago. I think my old printer is nearly 2 or 3 years old.
Yeah, it's been quite a while since you've gotten a new printer, and they've come a long way.
Yeah, because we first started with the just the regular Photon Monos, little guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, we definitely.
Oh, this bad boy's a beast. Look how big he is.
This is a hell of a printer. That's what I'm saying. Now, this thing is just going to be an absolute fingerprint magnet.
Yeah, not wrong.
As you can see on the back there, it does also have your exhaust
Oh, look
vent.
at that. That's cute.
So if you want to hook it up to something like that, we can. Now, first and foremost, we are going to have to quickly get this bad boy powered on to make sure that everything is A-OK.
Come around here then. And whenever you're unboxing one of these, you've got to have the mess. Because that's just a part. That's just the ritual, isn't it?
Sorry, there's a power brick that comes with it.
See that?
So
it says
toolkit
for a reason. Look at that.
It comes with a little air purifier.
Oh, wow.
There we go, we can plug that in the
Oh,
back.
some gloves. That'll last you about 10 seconds. Nice.
Yeah. Some latex gloves, which you definitely should not be using with this printer.
No, why do they give you latex gloves?
They're like, you die now.
You get resin in your fingertips.
There we go, just
Ooh.
takes a little sec to boot up.
Look at that.
Stunning. Right, we'll just make sure, so we got the system. Beautiful. Don't
Oh.
look directly in that, but all
Purple.
working.
Pretty.
Love it. Alright, I'm going to get this bad boy all set up. We won't go into detail in this video, but this is mostly just an unboxing and a quick first impressions. But we'll jump into all the nice looking footage next. I decided to go and print a couple of models that I knew were supported well because I had done them myself and had successful prints. Unfortunately, as you can see, things didn't quite go to plan. Basically, every single part of the model that had been on the plate pulled off, and unfortunately, it left a hole in my FEP. Now, as I go through changing the FEP, it was basically the same thing as doing it on my other printers, but I quickly just want to talk about why things went wrong. First and foremost, I decided to just use the same settings that I had on my old printer. Basically, this entire situation could have been completely avoided if I had have just started with the default settings that Soraya Tech offers. I basically took the default profile that Soraya Tech offers for the Satin 3 Ultra and adjusted the exposure value, which in hindsight probably wasn't a good thing. I did also have it on the default settings for a few other things and noticed that a lot of the lift and retract speeds were quite fast for the printer, and I didn't have high hopes, but while I was listening to the printer, it seemed to all be going fine. Unfortunately, that's not quite what happened. Now, a bit of a lesson learned from myself that next time I buy a new printer, or sort of anything in general, I'll probably end up going through and making sure that I do correct test prints and starting from default settings instead of just assuming that everything would be the exact same as my old printer. So honestly, that one's on me. I will admit, this was actually a pretty easy printer to change the FEP on. They said in the video that you just needed a piece of foam that I think was roughly about 18 or 8 mil thick, I think it was. I ended up just using a letter that I had on the bench, and spoiler alert, everything worked perfectly fine. So I went through, and mind you, there were so many screws in this, and unfortunately, I realized that when I got to the end, I completely missed one of the screws, which I think is just about to come up. So I had to pull every single part of the thing out, put that one screw back in, and then go through the process of retightening everything. The entire process took me roughly about half an hour and was simple enough to do. So once that was all done, I jumped in and started doing some more test prints. I first started by printing off this validation matrix, which is the first time I have ever printed one of these. I've never actually gone through and calculated my settings. I've kind of just adjusted it as I go and kind of played by feel. As you can see, everything came up pretty well. Initial looks on this thing, the prints are actually slightly overexposed. The pegs especially, you can see down the bottom, they are quite significantly bigger than the indent themselves. So I could probably adjust that later, but for the time being, I'm just going to keep it at these settings. Now that I had everything working, here's a look at the first print that came out of the printer. As you can see, absolutely fantastic detail. 2 out of 2 legs, perfect. Now, unfortunately, this was actually the first print that came off in that video that I first showed you. Basically nothing else printed except these 2, and I have a feeling that one of these bits, even after I cleaned the tank, was still stuck somewhere in there, and I probably should have done a second clean to make sure. The second print that I didn't quite go exactly to plan either. As you can see, like, the arm looks perfectly fine, the base wasn't too bad, but the model did have some fails on this. Ultimately, I ended up going back to the default settings, not changing a single thing besides the retract heights on this, and managed to get this beautiful final miniature out of it. Now, I'm going to do a bit of a quick comparison between this printer and my Photon Mono X, which is a 4K printer. Now, the whole reason that I bought this Satin 3 Ultra is I'm going to be using it for my business, and I wanted to be able to print miniatures both high quality and faster. Unfortunately, this printer doesn't actually print faster than my Mono X currently. As you can see, it does have really good detail in all the bases, but there is still some lines just on the base here. So this one came off the Satin 3 Ultra, and I genuinely was impressed with most of the details that came on it. I did notice on things like the arms and the torso, especially in areas that usually have layer lines from being rounded, there were significantly less than on my Photon Mono X. This could be down to anything from the orientation angle of the print itself, or just the fact that the screen is higher quality. Overall, this printer has genuinely impressed me with the amount of detail that it can render in most of these prints. I noticed that there's a lot less voxelization on the majority of the model, and although there was a slight misprint in this shoulder joint just there, the model in general had significantly less layer lines than on my 4K printer. This is mostly just due to the fact that there are more pixels within the screen, and it is able to render them at a higher quality, but you will still see layer lines as we are still printing at 50 microns. Alright, now quickly jumping over to the 4K, I'm just going to rush through this part. There are still the same layer lines that you can see on the Satin 3 Ultra on my Photon Mono X printer, but I did notice that they are much thicker and a lot more pronounced. Although you can view them on the 12K screen, the 4K one does render them with a much harsher edge. One of the biggest things for me was on the body here. I wanted to make sure that the majority of layer lines didn't render super harshly on them. They were especially noticeable on the 4K previously in both the legs and the upper parts of the arms. Basically any flat surface on the model I always found had very significant stepping on it. Now, we'll get some close-up photos coming up, so we'll jump into those now. One of the biggest things I've noticed about 3D printing videos is the fact that when people compare higher quality screens to lower quality screens, they never print at the same layer height. I do understand that a newer printer will have a smaller layer height, but doing it as a direct comparison to a 4K printer or a lower quality printer isn't quite one-to-one. So I wanted to go through and show what it would be like printing on a 12K screen at 50 microns and a 4K screen at 50 microns. And upon initial inspection, I did notice a significantly less amount of layer lines on the 12K screen. One of the best examples of this was on the bases that I printed during the test prints. As you can see, this first one here is from the 12K screen, and the second one here is from the 4K screen. There are significantly more layer lines on the 4K screen. The 12K base is not without them, but they are definitely more noticeable on the 4K base. Now I also decided to give both of the models that I printed on each printer a bit of an undercoat. This brings up basically any flaw in the prints and allows you to see the layer lines much more significantly. And from initial inspection, as you can see, the 4K one on the right has significantly more layer lines than the one on the left. Now, mind you, both of these guys are printed at 50 microns, so it's a direct comparison. The whole reason that both of these models might have sort of more or less lines depends on whether or not the orientation as well. I don't actually know what the exact right orientation for a model is on the LEU Satin, but I did print the 4K one at a 45-degree angle on my Photomono, because I do understand that that reduces the amount of layer lines on that model specifically. Now, I really wanted to show what could make this printer shine. The fact that I've bought this brand new printer and it is capable of printing at a much smaller layer height. Now, this is one thing that you won't find on the older printers at 4K. A lot of them are limited to the 50 micron layer size, and you'll only find that the smaller layer sizes are applicable to higher quality screens. Luckily enough, the Satin 3 Ultra is able to print at 24 microns. Now, I didn't quite print these guys at 24 microns, I actually went for 20 microns. I don't personally have a profile for these guys, so I just decided to grab one off the Lychee Slicer community, and it did surprisingly well. The biggest thing that I want to show you is between two of these frog models that I found from One Page Rules. So when it came to both of these models, printing at 20 microns obviously blew the 4K printer out of the water. As you can see on both of these guys, I'm going to specifically zoom in on the head crest of this frog guy here. As you can see, there are a bunch of layer lines on top of this one. Now, these run from the bottom of the print all the way to the top, and they are very easy to see, and you will notice that when you start painting something like this, they will show up quite significantly. Whereas on the 20 micron print, they were absolutely non-existent. My apologies for the dustiness on these models. I was in a bit of a rush to get this video out, so my wash and cure water was a little bit dirty after the mishaps with the ACF film and everything. But as you can see, the overall quality within this model is just absolutely incredible. And just before I go, one thing I did notice about the 4K versus the 12K prints is the 4K prints are much more matte compared to the 12K ones, even at different layer heights. So I don't know whether or not that's just a artifact from the screen itself or just the way that the resin cures in the new one. I'm not 100% sure. Overall, I am really impressed with what this printer can do, and I'm definitely excited to try out some new stuff in the future. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for some future 3D printing content. Now, thank you all for watching, and if you guys do want to support the channel, feel free to jump down the description down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe and join the community. And if you want to go a little bit further, make sure to grab some models from my Etsy store. It goes a long way to supporting the channel and keeping these videos going. So as always, everyone, happy hobbying, and I'll see you next time. Bye!